Christians, I've titled this message, Esau, the Man of Sin. I'm going to begin taking this message from the 25th chapter of Genesis, and I'll be dealing with the subject matter of Esau and Jacob. Esau and Jacob. So beginning in Genesis chapter 25 and verse 27, I'm going to read down to verse 34. And it says this: "And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter and a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And Jacob sawed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said to Jacob, 'Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint.' Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, 'Sell me this day thy birthright.' And Esau said, 'Behold, I am at the point to die. And what profit shall this birthright do to me?' And Jacob said, 'Swear to me this day.' And he sware unto him. And he sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils. And he did eat and drink, and he rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright." Esau despised his birthright. So to begin with, let's deal with Esau and talk a little bit about Esau. Esau, it says, was the hunter. He was a hunter. We are told in verse 27 that Esau was a cunning hunter and a man of the field. Now, what was a hunter? In the biblical perspective and in the biblical narrative as it pertains to Esau, the hunter describes someone who is a roving, daring, restless nature, and someone who is also a stranger to peace. These are not people who look for peace. These are also people who are always on the go, never settled anywhere, take chances, always restless, never finding comfort. And it says, lastly, that they are strangers to peace. But here's something else I will tell you about hunters in the Bible. Whenever you come across the expression a hunter in the Bible, it is invariably found in an evil connection. You'll see this in 1 Samuel 24, verse 11, Job 10:16, and other verses. But what's important to know is that from the context of the Bible, hunter is never associated with anything good. A hunter is often and always invariably associated with that which is evil, or in connection with what is evil. In fact, the only two people in the Bible who were called hunters, there are only two people that were called hunters in the Bible. And that was Esau, and that was Nimrod. And so the best way to describe hunters in the Bible are those who would be construed in our time as rebels. They were rebels. Hunters were rebels, and they were always rebels without a cause. Now, on the flip side, the antithesis of a hunter is the word search. Search is the antithesis of hunter in biblical terms. And search is the good version or the flip side of hunter. And this is the term that God uses when he says that he is seeking for his own. When God is seeking. So there's a difference between a hunter and a seeker. A seeker, someone who seeks, is someone who has an objective, someone who has a goal, someone who has a line or a place they want to reach. Whereas a hunter has no focus. A hunter has unbridled ambition, but to no end. And so a hunter like Esau and a hunter like Nimrod, these are people that just seek the next best thing. They don't have any particular goals that they're going after. They're just seeking to have whatever fulfills them in the immediate moment. That's what they do. And so Esau was this kind of a man. He was a hunter. But it also says that Esau was a man of the field. He was a hunter and he was the man of the field. He was always in the field. He is an earthly man. He is a man of the world. He is not a godly man. He is not fixated on some real goal in life. His only focus is to run around and just hunt and to go after whatever it is he can obtain for his own personal gain. So he's a man of the field. And in Matthew chapter 13, when Christ gives this parable, in verse 38, it says this: the field is the world. The field is the world, and the good seed of the world are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. And so Esau was a man of the field, and thereby he was also a man of the world. He was a worldly man. And so we see this in our own culture. We see this in our own culture today, whereby we get people whose whole goal and ambition is to get and to consume as much of this world as humanly possible. Not for any particular reason other than to fulfill and to satisfy their appetite for the moment. Their appetite needs to be fulfilled for the day. They're not future thinking people. They're not playing the long game. Jacob, as we're going to see, was a man of the long game. He looked toward the future. But Esau was a man of the field. He was a man of the world. He was a hunter. His motto of the day would have been go and to consume as much as he can to get whatever the world can offer him. His whole idea is to conquer the world, to reign supreme in the world, to have all that the world has to offer at his disposal. But none of it ever brings any real satisfaction. None of it. It never brings any real satisfaction. It never brings any real peace. But as I said earlier, they are not those. People of the world are not those who are seeking peace. So Esau was a man of the world. He was a worldly being. His concern is only that which brings pleasantness at the moment. Pleasantness in the moment. By contrast, we have his brother Jacob. Now, before I talk about the contrast of Jacob juxtaposed against his brother Esau, the first thing that is important to understand, which I failed to bring out first, was that these two men were both born to Rebekah and their father Isaac. Isaac was the child of promise that God gave to Moses and Sarah, who both were beyond the age of having children. But Jacob and Esau, they were, when Rebekah was pregnant, these two boys were twins. They were twins in the womb. They both had the same mother. They both had the same father. And no, I'm talking about Isaac. Jacob and Esau were born to Isaac. So they were twins. You might be right. Hold on. I think I'm losing my train of thought here. Let me see. Yeah, Isaac was born to Abraham. Sorry. So I had it right. So anyway, so Jacob and Esau, twins, same parents, same father, same age, and they were born obviously at the same time being twins. And so Esau came out first and Jacob came out second. And by birthright, Esau would have been the one who would receive the birthright that came from his father Isaac, which also came from his grandfather Abraham. So now, we look at Jacob by contrast. So as I said, Esau was a hunter and a man of the field. Jacob, on the other hand, it says he was a tent dweller and a plain man. He was a tent dweller and a plain man. Now, the word plain, when it talks about plain man, it means he was perfect, that he was complete, that he was upright, that he was undefiled. And dwelling in tents denotes that Jacob, it connotates that Jacob was, as a tent dweller, he was a stranger and a pilgrim, meaning that his life was characterized by constant moving. He never allowed himself to get settled in any given place, but he was always ready to go. He was always ready to move because he was a stranger and a pilgrim, and he had no abiding city, which is exactly what Christians are supposed to be. People that are not planting themselves to this earth like Esau, but to be tent dwellers like we are. Our body is our tent. We are not to find repose and comfort and solace in all of our life's ambition to be wrapped up in our earthly present existence, what takes place in our bodies. We are pilgrims and sojourners on this earth. This is not where we look to establish our home. And this is not like Esau where we find our hope. Esau was a man of the ground. He was a man of the earth. He was a man of the world. And all of the glory of the world is what he sought after. But Jacob was a man who lived in a tent and dwelt in tents. And he was a stranger and a pilgrim having no abiding city. But he looked for a better city to come. He looked for a better place. He looked for a better habitation that is not here on this earth. He looked for a better habitation whose builder and maker was God. He looked after what his grandfather was looking for, Abraham, a better habitation, which is to come later in the future. Now, being that Jacob was a man of the tent or a tent dweller, he was a person who was a man of the house. As I said earlier, Esau was a man of the field, a man of the field. But Jacob was a man of the house. Jacob kept the house. And it reminds me of one of my favorite verses in the Bible, probably my favorite verse in the Bible, Luke 2:49, which when Jesus was 12 years old and his family had left him behind in Jerusalem, and they realized a day later that he had been missing, and they started their journey back to look for him, Mary and Joseph. And when they found him, they asked Jesus, "Why have you done this to us? Why did you hang back here and put us through this?" And Jesus said to them, and by the way, they found Jesus in the temple, having conversation with the elders of the synagogue. And so when they said that, when they asked Jesus Christ, "Why did you do this to us?" he answered and said, "How is it that you were looking for me? How is it that you sought me? Don't you know that I must be about my Father's business?" And what he means is, don't you know that I must be about my Father's house? I'm looking after my Father's house. Like our Lord, who Jacob looked forward to seeing, he too was about his father's business, or about his father's house. Esau was a man of the field. He was about whatever the world can provide for him. He was a man of the ground, a man of the earth, a man of carnality, a man saturated in secularism, a man whose appetite could be satisfied in any number of ways, but only temporarily. He was a man that had no real hope in this world other than the next best thing at the moment. But Jacob was a man about the house. In Hebrews chapter 3, verse 3, it says this: "For this man was counted worthy of more glory than Moses," talking about Christ, "inasmuch as he who had builded the house has more honor than the house." Verse 4, "For every house is builded by some man, but he that built all things is God." Verse 5, "And Moses verily, he too was faithful in all of his house as a servant for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken after." Verse 6, "But Christ as a son over his own house, whose house are we? Whose house are we, since we hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of the hope firm unto the end." Whereas Esau was planted to the earth, Jacob, like our Lord, like Moses, and like Christ, and like Abraham, Jacob was just passing through. He was just passing through. Esau was all about the world, all about the ground, all about earth, all about making it big on this earth. But Jacob was one who saw himself as a vagrant, as a sojourner, as a traveler, as one passing through, one who was a pilgrim looking for a better land, looking for a better city, looking for a better abode that was made and constructed by God himself. This was what Jacob was looking for, and this is what we as believers ought to be looking for. Now in Genesis 25, where I'm reading, in verse 30, it says this: "And Esau said to Jacob, Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom." Now it says that Esau was out in the field. He comes home and he's wearied. He's tired. He's plumb tuckered out from a busy day of being busy, chasing after nothing other than more busyness. So he comes home to the house, and he comes to his brother, Jacob, the one who keeps the house. And he goes to him and he says, feed me, I pray thee. Feed me that same red pottage, because I'm tired, I'm weary, I'm weak, I'm starving. And then it says, therefore, because of this, Esau's name was Edom. Now, if you have your Bible and you're looking at chapter 25, verse 30 of Genesis, you'll notice that it says that Jacob, or that Esau asked Jacob to feed him from that same red pottage. Pottage in the scriptures, in the Old Testament, is pretty much considered to be the food of the prophets. Pottage was the food of the prophets. And if you're looking at your scriptures, you most likely will see the word pottage put in italics or italicized. And the reason why it is italicized is because the translators put in pottage to make the verse make more sense. But this is one of those few places where it would have been better to let the word out. But nonetheless, it is there, and it does give the sense of the passage some credence. It does add to it a little bit, but it goes too far in a sense that it takes away what Esau was really saying, because he really didn't know what the name of the dish was. He didn't really know what to call the food, but somehow it was, the appearance of it was familiar to him, and he called it red. So basically what he's saying is this. He says to his brother Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red stuff. So he's saying the red stuff. So pottage wasn't in the original language, but it was just what Esau was asking for was that red dish, that red stuff, that good red food that you always made. And then it says, therefore, his name was called Edom. Edom means red. Esau means red. And the reason why his nation that came from him was called Edom was because of the food that he could not, the pottage that he could identify as pottage, but knew it only under the term red. So now in verse 30, Esau asked Jacob to feed him. Now, it is not unusual for the world to seek comfort from the righteous. So one of the things that we see here is that Esau, being a man of the world, when he becomes concerned about his comfort, when he becomes concerned about his weariness, when he becomes concerned about in-home comfort, he is not one who has positioned himself to take care of himself or to have things amenable. So he goes to his brother, the believer. He goes to him. The man of the earth comes to the man who is a transient, sojourning pilgrim, a believer, and he seeks comfort from him. I'm sure that many of us, before we became Christians, when we were running around in the world and whenever things became difficult, very often we would seek comfort from those who we knew were believers. Usually the older folks who'd been loving the Lord for as long as we can remember. They always provided good, comfortable Christian homes. And you would find comfort there. Even though you didn't believe what they believed, even if you didn't know the God that they worshiped, but you knew that there was something comfortable about them. There was something peaceful about being amongst them. And so they didn't judge us. I had my two godparents. They were like that for me. Long before I was a Christian, I loved to be around them. They always had a comfortable home. They always had calmness. They were always talking about the Lord. They never forced me to learning about God. They never did any of those kind of things, but they always made me feel very comfortable and secure. And they always provided good food. They always had the comfortable beds. They always let me watch TV. They just made me comfortable. And very often we see this with the unbelieving world. They very often, when things get rough, they try to find comfort. And when they can't, it is not unusual for them to come to the Christians in the family or the Christian friends, seeking comfort, seeking advice, seeking a place to stay, seeking someone who might tell them the truth. So Esau was faint and weary, and he was worn out from the world, worn out from the field. And he returned from the field without his venison, and he was hungry, and he was tired. Just like sinners are always worn out by the world. They're always worn out by the exploits and the pursuits, which are endless and unsatisfying. They are always worn out from chasing the dream. They're always worn out by their ambitions that they consistently pursue, not even knowing why they do it. But somehow it has been ingrained in our society that we are expected to have this sort of exaggerated ambition. An ambition that takes us nowhere, and not an ambition which just causes us to prepare ourselves for what happens when we leave here. Most of mankind has an ambition that is targeted and geared to one thing: how comfortable you are in this world. People in the world, sinners, don't look for this earth or don't see this earth as the preparation ground for what happens next. Most people today are comfortable with trying to make investments in the stock market, make investments in real estate, making investments in here and over there, in Bitcoin and all this other kind of stuff. I understand that. I was young once. I understand that. But what happens is these people, all of who I'm familiar with, because I was one of them,